our school board candidates here. If I could ask everyone to please rise and join in pledging allegiance to the flag. I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. And if you could just all remain standing for a moment as we remember our troops in harm's way, both here and abroad. Thank you. And let me briefly go over the ground rules. Earlier, a few minutes ago, Councilor Tom Dolan selected each candidate's name from a hat that we had placed earlier, and they're sitting on the dais in that order. We did that to be fair so that no one gets preferential treatment. We'd appreciate no disrespect, no personal attacks, other inappropriate behavior will not be tolerated. Candidates will agree to conduct the debate with proper respect. Everyone will have 2 minutes to introduce yourself in opening remarks, explain why you're running for the school board. We're going to have questions. We'll allow each person 1.5 minutes to answer the question in the first go-round. And what we'll do is also, if you'd like to rebut another candidate's answer, you feel free to do that. And we'll keep that to 1 minute. And we'll go back to 1 minute with the original candidate. And then we'll move on to the next question. We're going to rotate the sequence so that each candidate will get the opportunity to answer first on at least one question. And we will be taking questions from the press, email questions that were sent to either myself or to Kathy Wagner. And then we will have public questions as well, and we'll just go back and forth that way until we run out of time. Our goal is to end at noon, and we will certainly do that. Joining us this morning, we've got Meredith Farrell from LondonderryNH.net. We've got April Gilmet from the Union Leader, and Doug Ireland from the Eagle Tribune is with us as well. And with that, the way that the draw went, Mike Boyle, you are up first.
Good morning, everybody. As the moderator said, it's Mike Boyle. I am married, have 2 children, have lived in Londonderry for a long time. Both my children have gone through the school system or currently are in. I have a junior in high school and a sophomore in college. I have been part of the community for, since my oldest moved, since we moved here from, and she has been in the school since 1998. I think I tried to figure out before we came. So involved in the community since the early 90s. Why am I running for the school board? There were some open positions, and I wanted to continue the teamwork that I see that has happened over the last 14 years since I've been here, and try and build on that teamwork and keep it going. I think that the school board, the school district, and the town have worked very well together to give our children the best education that the dollar can buy. Thank you.
Thanks, Mike. And Steve Young.
Thank you, George. I've been in the community for about 30 years. I moved here with my family in the early 80s from an apple orchard in upstate New York, and came to the community and found that it looked an awful lot like where my home was. So we decided to make this our home. My twins at that time were 2.5, 3 years old, so they enrolled in one of the local programs that were available for preschool, and then we put them through the kindergarten at our expense, and then they entered Matthew Thornton. My youngest son, Justin, also went through the school system up till grade 11, and he's no longer with us. I started a company, Imageability, in 1989, and that's a marketing services company. It does a number of different items and has been working successful for the last 23 years or so. I've served in the community, I feel, and this starts back with my days as a youth. It's important to give back to the community, and in scouting I learned that it's not just something that you do that day, it's something you do for a lifetime. So I've served in the community on the budget committee for 1 term. I served on the Manchester Airport Authority for 8 years, served in the Master Plan Steering Committee in 2004, the Historic Properties Task Force, and a number of other task forces that I've been asked to contribute to. I volunteered pro bono to the town for its marketing services and for its website, and I've served on the school board for 3 terms. I also serve as the president of NH Cafe, which is the New Hampshire Communities for Adequate Funding of Education, and we're the group that successfully charged the state and won our lawsuit about half a decade ago. Running this time because right now the school board is a rather young group. We have somebody that's in their first year, we have someone that's in their second year, and we have John just in his second term. So I thought that it would be good to bring some stability and institutional knowledge to the board, and that's why I'd like to get elected this year.
Thank you, Steve. Glenn Douglas.
Morning, thank you. My name's Glenn Douglas. I've been in town since about 1996. Moved up here from Massachusetts for my job. We decided to stay here basically for the school system. I'm married. My wife's a teacher's aide at South School. She's been in the school for about 14 years, I believe. I have 3 kids. My son is a freshman at St. A's, all graduated. He graduated from LHS last year. My daughter is graduating this year. She's looking to go into nursing somewhere. My littlest one is a 3rd grader at South School. Why am I running? For some reason, apparently, I have I've had a long time interest in education. I work at a company and all the companies I've worked at have a lot of international employees, usually engineering types. I do work for mechanical design. And a lot of the times the discussions that come up, for whatever reason, is about education. And a lot of it is comparing overseas to here and what's going on. I think we need a little bit of a focus change generally in the U.S. to be able to compete. It's not just competing in your backyard now. You're competing with people from all over the world. I also think that there's a little bit of a disconnect that's going on. The economy is tough. You see that a lot. I work with people that are not retiring because they can't. When the economy is tough, I think there's 2 ways you can deal with the problem, which I deal with at work. You can inform everyone, tell everyone what's coming up and what's going on and how do we deal with this. Or you have a project manager that says, we're going to deal with it this way, and when it gets to manufacturing, they're going to have to deal with it. I see a little bit of a disconnect in the information that's coming from the school board. And I think we need to inform people what's going on, get feedback from the community, and deal with it. Just because the economy is bad doesn't mean you necessarily have to cut things. However, the voters decide, and what the voters decide, the people on the school board have to deal with. That's pretty much it.
Thank you, Glenn. Millie Tamburello.
Hi, good morning. My name is Melanie Tamburello, as you've heard and can see I have a sign. We are actually newer to the community. We've been here since 2006. We now have 3 children, 2 of which have been born here. We moved here after a stint of active duty. My husband got stationed in Massachusetts, and after a search of towns and areas close enough for him to commute, we settled on Londonderry. And when the time came up to decide whether to stay or go, we decided to stay because we love Londonderry. We love the school system. It's a great community that offers a lot of different things. So as of right now, we have a child in 2nd grade, we have a child in kindergarten, and we have one upcoming into preschool. I'm running for school board as a chance to serve the town. I believe I bring not only business experience from my work experience before I had children. I worked for multiple businesses. As an office manager, I've worked with customer relations. I've managed a couple businesses. So I do think I get along with people and numbers very well. But I also find a greater call to serve the town of Londonderry. I am involved with the PTA, involved in activities with my children. And I believe that the school board is kind of a culmination of working with the of course, the students' needs, the parents' needs, and the town's needs on the school. So I would love the opportunity to be a part of that and serve Londonderry. So with that said, I would hope you would vote for me, but I really welcome the chance to be on the school board.
Thank you, Melanie. And Joseph Caputo.
Morning. Thank
Morning.
you for having me. I'm sorry I'm late. I
problem.
was at the Access Center, but I'm here now and happy to be so. I have been a proud resident of this town for 23 years. My wife and I have raised two daughters, Tessa, who is a senior at Londonderry High, and Jenna, who is a sophomore at Mount Holyoke College. The town has given me most of what I consider to be the fruits of my life, which is the experiences that I've had with my children. And when I think of that, I think that most of those activities, in one way or another, come from the school. I think of the first day that I put Jenna on the bus, couldn't leave us soon enough. She was ready to go. Tess crying, kicking, and screaming. No matter how much we told her, she wasn't having it. I then remember elementary school band concerts, squeaky violins and out-of-tune clarinets, but wonderful, wonderful music. A prom, 3 state championships in lacrosse for Tess, and who knows what's ahead of both of them. All of this is because of the Londonderry school system. I would just be humbled and grateful to have a part in such a wonderful organization. What I feel I can bring to the conversation is civility, collaboration, and maybe just now and then a little humor and outside of the box thinking. It's a cliche, but Jenna, my DI'er, has told me, make sure you get DI in there, Dad. So go DI. But beyond that, from a practical standpoint, I'm a self-employed attorney. Don't hold the attorney against me. I'm trying to find something else to do. If anybody has any offers, 30 years out, I'm a little stuck. But before that, I was a school teacher, a social studies teacher in the middle school with a desire to change the world. And when that didn't happen, I went to law school, and I'm taking a different angle. As I said, I am self-employed. I have a flexibility in my schedule. I work in town, and I am prepared to commit what I now understand to be a substantial amount of my time for this pursuit. I have no children left in the district, so I bring no particular angle as to we need to do special ed or we need to do the band or sports. I think what we need to do is keep Londonderry going in the direction it's going, and I would appreciate your vote if allowed to do so.
Thanks, Joe. And Letha Riley.
Thank you, George. Good morning. My name is Letha Riley. I've been here with my family since 2007. My husband Wade, and I have 3 children, 3 sons actually. They're all in South School, 2nd grader and 2 first graders. My goal in running for a position on Londonderry School Board is essentially to continually improve the educational experience of our children here in this town. I believe I'm uniquely qualified to do that. Prior to starting a family, I worked as a director of a Fortune 500 company. I was responsible for a staff of over 40 people, a budget of over $13 million, and I was also responsible for negotiation of contracts with customers, vendors, many other responsibilities of that nature. Education was really the key to this responsibility for me. I graduated from a high school in New Jersey that had an award-winning school district, essentially, so I got a great foundation. I earned a bachelor's degree at the University of Massachusetts at Amherst, and I went on to get my MBA from Boston College. In recent years, I've engaged in a variety of ways here to make a difference in my community. I'm a proud graduate of Leadership Londonderry 2010. I currently serve on the Planning Board and the Southern New Hampshire Planning Commission. I'm chairman of the Master Plan Steering Committee here in town. And with my children's Enrollment in South School, I manage several PTA-sponsored activities there. And I'm also a substitute teacher in the district. The takeaway from my educational experience was that an investment in our schools is really an investment in the community. An exemplary school system is also one that offers a varied academic experience, vibrant sports and arts programs, and a variety of clubs that serve both academic and civic purposes. I'm raising my family here in Londonderry because those qualities exist here, and I would ask for your vote on Election Day.
Thank you, Letha. And with that, we can move to our questionings. And Meredith, you first.
Okay, so sports and extracurricular activities are very important to students, yet it always seems that they're the first area that adults threaten to cut. What is your position in this area of concern for all students?
And we're going to start with you, Mike.
Okay, so the question was, what's my position on sports, athletics, and other activities, or was it sports and athletics?
No, all activities.
All activities? You're right. It is the first thing that I hear when I am involved in sports activities. I've coached youth lacrosse, and most of us have probably been involved or will be involved in recreational sports that use school property also. My position on that is that as my daughter, I'll just use my experience, is that my daughter entered a university, not in New Hampshire, University of Virginia, and was involved in athletics down there. One of the major reasons that she was picked to go there was the well-rounded student, which meant clubs, different sports, which we have soccer, lacrosse, basketball, and colleges now are, well, I shouldn't say now, have always been looking for that well-rounded student. And in order to have that well-rounded student, you have to balance the AP classes, the engineering, the math, the science, social studies, and I believe that those activities are just as important. So they shouldn't be the first thing that's looked at to be cut.
Thank you, Mike. And thanks for keeping it in time. Appreciate that. Steve Young.
I love the way you phrase that, quote, that adults want to cut. So it's one of those big bad adults, and a wicked old one at that. The way I look at the extracurricular and co-curricular activities is they're an important part of the entire package. You know, there's a reason that West Point requires that its cadets participate in a sporting program, participate in other activities. With my children, my intent was to always have them involved in 2 activities. And I said, kids, it doesn't matter what activities they are, you pick them, but you need to be involved in them, whether they be in school or out of school, whether they be scouting or sports or track or DI, go DI. You need to keep the kids busy and keep them involved so that they stay out of trouble. The other item is, as far as expense, we do have a lot of booster clubs that participate in the community, that get donations from businesses, that have bake sales and cookie sales and other items, selling of cards and scholarship funds. And they do what they can to offset what the school can't afford. So to me, it's important to fund those activities and not to look at those as the first to be cut.
Thank you, Steve. And Glenn Douglas.
As far as activities, I absolutely agree. They're very important, and for people that are going to college, college apps definitely look at a lot of things. Why do people come up, and that's the first thing to say they want cut? Honestly, my opinion is the school is in the business of educating kids. And when you talk to other people from other places, I work with a guy who has a couple master's degree and he's working on his doctorate. I think he's 27 years old. We're competing against them. Should they be cut? If we can fund them, I'm all for it. When the community comes and says, we need to cut something, is it cut an AP class or cut a sports program? The school hasn't done that. There's been lots of talk that says, well, we want this cut. It hasn't cut. But number one, you know, it's education, and football's great, sports are great, but in the end, you know, if you're going to school to be an engineer or a chemist, and hopefully something we can bring back to this country, you need the hard academics. You do need the time on the football team to blow off some steam, but I think that's why it comes up.
Thank you, Glenn, appreciate that. And Melanie Tamburello.
As far as cutting athletics first, I don't believe anything should be gone to first. I believe a wide picture should be painted as to where the money's being spent. I'm a firm believer in streamlining, trying to find ways to save money without cutting a program or an after-school activity. I remember applying for colleges, and I remember how important to fill those boxes were. It was, you know, what do you do, not just what your grades were. So I don't believe that athletics or after-school or intramural should be the first thing to be looked at. I believe that there's a wider range to the school than just the activities offered. I believe the education is super important, and I do believe our schools strive to give an extraordinary education to the children. That's one of the reasons we stayed here. So as far as adults going to cut athletics and after-school activities first, I don't believe in that. I believe that you need to look at everything, find ways to maybe save money without cutting.
Thank you. And Joe Caputo.
I believe that sports are a key component to the high school experience for a number of kids, but I also believe that there are other co-curricular activities that are equally important. So I would hope that the array, the variation, the variety of experiences would be the driving force. If it meant cutting back a little here to maintain a program, I would be for that. I would be for the notion that every child should be able to find something that they really are excited about. And once you have an excited child, at least what I recall from my developmental psychology classes, once they are excited, once they are stimulated, they are more receptive to the more mundane aspects of the periodic table or, you know, algebra. So I would do everything possible to maintain the variety of extracurricular experiences, favoring no one, and dare I say it, the band. The band is awesome, but the beauty of the band, as I understand it, is they're largely self-funding, and that's a wonderful model for other groups as well, perhaps.
Thank you. And Letha Riley.
It's tough to go last.
That's-
There are a lot of great points that were made, and I'd have to say ditto to many of them. You know, in the interest of full disclosure, from the moment I set foot in a high school, I played varsity sports. So right then and there, I'm biased so far as sports programs. For many reasons. One, because I was very active, but also the life lessons I learned from being in sports helped me in business, helps me today as a parent. I believe very strongly in it. The team player aspect, I can't tell you what I got for that. It's just, it was an awesome experience. But I also received those sparks and those highlights of interest from other areas as well, and I believe we need a variety across all things. The interesting thing about Londonderry is that more than really any town I've ever been in, on pretty even par with the town I grew up with, but I'd even dare to say Londonderry has more of the variety of offerings that sometimes I struggle with that because my children want to do everything. We need to force them to choose. But you never know what's going to spark the interest in a child and what's going to carry with them the rest of their lives. And I think that the life lessons that you can learn from a variety of activities, including academics, really is critical. So I personally, to Melanie's point and several others here who've mentioned them as well, that I think you do need to look at the entire package, and you need to understand where your efforts are best suited.
Thank you, Letha. And does anybody want to add anything? Question? No? Good. We'll move along then. And April.
Okay, my question is, with a lot of talk recently about either lengthening the school year or having longer school days, what are your personal thoughts on the matter?
And we're going to begin with Steve Young.
This gets me in trouble every time.
You've been involved.
I'm often asked to speak at the civics class to talk with them about what being on the school board is like. And I always start off with, would you vote for me? And I can usually get about half the kids in class to raise their hand. But then I mention that I'm for Saturday school, and then nobody wants to vote for me. And it isn't that Saturday school specific is what I'm interested in. Glenn brought it up, and he's so right. The problem is the other communities that are out there, they're calling me all day long in my office. They want to do the knockouts. They want us to send them the files so that they can knock out the person's picture, so they can do the standees. They want to manufacture the window shade displays that we make in China instead of us manufacturing them here with people that work in the United States and in the community of Londonderry. They want to do the coding, and they want to do the e-commerce sections of our websites. And what I'm looking for is a way to not keep them in the seats, but keep it in their brains or get it into their brains, to train self-learners, to get the students, as our previous Plattsburgh, I'm sorry, not Plattsburgh, but Lake Placid school teacher said here, to get them excited about something so that then it'll spark something and they go off and they work on that themselves. We've got to find a way to get more learning time for them, whether it be in the classroom or whether it be stimulating them to do it on their own. Because if they don't, the international business community is going to eat our lunch.
Thanks, Steve. Glenn.
I guess I have a little bit of an unfair advantage because I was actually asked pretty much that same question last year, sitting up here. And I kind of expected it might be asked again. Absolutely, I think we need to look at more education time. I don't know if that's extending the school day. I don't know if it's a Saturday. But looking at competing. One of the things I hear is we can't do that. It actually, it was asked last year. I'm not sure it's been addressed by the school board yet, but it was asked of the candidates last year. It briefly came up at a school board meeting when they were talking about swapping vacations. I was at a Relay for Life meeting and I didn't get to attend. I tried to watch most of it online. We have to do something. Like Steve said, we have to be able to compete. And as much as it's nice to say I want to be able to do this and get out of school at 2 and go play ball and do this, when you get to the real world in business, you're faced with a totally different reality. You're faced with people that, a lot of the people I work with, because we deal with most of our businesses in China, if you have good grades in China, the Chinese government will pay and pay and pay as far as you can go. Multiple PhDs, whatever you want. Unfortunately, they don't really care about the entire society. But it's something that needs to be addressed, and honestly, I know other school districts, the excuse is, well, we can't because Manchester doesn't, and this doesn't. There's really no reason that Londonderry can't stand up and say, I think we need to look at this, we need to form a task force, and we need to go to the state and say, we need to at least discuss it across the board so that all the school districts discuss it together and say, do we need to do this, and do we need to do it now? That's it.
Thanks, Glenn. And Melanie.
We've been fortunate. We've actually lived in a foreign culture. We've lived in Japan. And I can remember we started there. I had a new baby. And I would watch 5-year-olds get on the bus themselves, a town bus, not a school bus, to go to school. You would see them do that Monday through Friday, early in the morning, coming home usually around 4 or 4:30. And you'd see it for a half day on Saturdays. I do know that they push hard there. They push education hard, not just in the schools, but at home. So going to a longer day or going to a Saturday, I definitely think that's something that could be looked at. But I also believe the home aspect is a big aspect of your kids in school and making sure that they're getting what they need to compete later in life. My kids come home and they get a break from school, but it's, homework time, time to practice handwriting, time to practice coloring because you're not in school yet. And we spend a lot of time talking about things that are in encyclopedias and in books. And we always encourage maybe not the why, but the how come and how it works. And I definitely believe the school has a lot to do with how far your child's going to get and be able to compete once they go on into a career in life, whether it be a career as somebody who has a trade or somebody who has a doctorate. But I also believe that what you're doing at home is important as well. I definitely believe the conversation could be had as to what could help the kids become more productive. And I definitely believe that's a collaborative effort, not just for somebody on the school board, but for the teachers, the parents, and considering the children as well as to what their needs are.
Thank you. And Joe?
Well, this is what gets me going. This is the kind of question that I would hope, if being fortunate enough to be elected, I could address. I come to it with this idea. Nothing is off the table. Everything ought to be considered. I think that anything that enhances the teacher's job in the classroom in terms of continuity is a good thing. I was fortunate enough to be a South School volunteer. It seems like South School is overrepresented here, but I have friends in the North End, I think. At any rate, when I was fortunate enough to be a South School, basically a classroom aide, sitting in the classroom and doing things with them, I always had a chance to talk with the teachers. And to the one, they always said the first probably month to month and a half, we're just getting them back to where they were. Now, I understand that part of that is the nature of an elementary school student's mind, but I think if that could be addressed in some way, we would get more bang for our buck. We would get more out of the educational process in the way we apply the resource. It doesn't have to be a cut, no-cut decision. It can be more of an allocation decision. The one thing I think should not come into the mix, however, is the convenience of the parents. I don't want to hear about timeshares. I don't really even want to hear about trips to grandma. I really think if we're all going to be true to our words up here, we need to say the kids come first and we'll vacation around them. We are not a $26 million a year daycare service. Thank you.
Thank you. And Letha?
Yeah, I mean, in my house, similar to what Melanie was just alluding to, in my house, if my kids aren't sleeping, they're learning, but that's because that's the way my husband and I have chosen to raise our children. I have the luxury, if you want to call it that, of staying home with my children, and I take that job very seriously. We're forever finding ways to make it fun. And, kids at my kids' age, 8 and twins going on 7, really are sponges at this age. And we find that it benefits them when they go to school, and certainly it makes them better prepared for the teachers as well. But I understand your question is more related to policy. And I think that as a school board, you're really focusing on the people as a whole, not just a few of us parents who've made certain choices and prepare their children in a certain way. We're talking about the benefit of the community as a whole, and to talk to some of the other comments as well. That I think that the notion of exploring all different ideas is always advisable. And try to understand the parental support for this type of thing. Has anyone ever asked the parents this? Yeah, I'm sure you've gotten a few outspoken ones who've said yes or no, but how about we all get in a room and talk about it? You might be surprised at what you hear if you get an accurate representation of a nice sampling of population of parents here in town.
Thank you, Letha. And Mike?
Last.
It's going to happen to everybody at some
Yep,
point.
no, thank you. Seems like a question that would allow you to give a very simple answer to a very complex problem. There's avenues of, if we're gonna keep the students longer, if we're gonna keep them on Saturday, if we're gonna keep them over the summer. I think, we were talking about a year-round school system. And all of those approaches would have an impact, cost or cost savings or cost increase. One of my biggest things that I talked about at the beginning was teamwork. I am sure that if I get on the school board, or if I was to go and look at the past history of this, that this problem has been talked about before. I've already heard getting rid of one of the winter vacations, year-round school. I've heard that when I was a kid. So how much time do we spend on that, again, if it's already been studied, or how do we keep it moving forward? I think those are some of the tough questions that we need to ask ourselves and that we need to ask the community. I think the school system is going pretty well. Could it be tweaked? How do we tweak it? How do we keep the cost down while we tweak it? If we increase the school year, would we not have to increase teacher salary? Would we have to heat the buildings longer, or are they already heated long enough? So there's a lot of things that we can say, yes, let's do this, this is the right thing to do, but when you get down into the brass tacks and look at it, you may want to keep that history and bring it forward and say, no, we've looked at this, it didn't work at that time, are we gonna look at it again and try it again?
Thanks, Mike. Appreciate that. And before I go to the audience, to public take question, I'm just going to ask you guys, what we'd like to do is try to get as many questions and get as much discussion as we can. And right now, we've been here for about half an hour. We've gotten through 2 questions. So let's try to shorten our answers. I originally said 1.5 minutes. Let's drop that to 1 minute if we could. And this way we can get some more discussion going, okay? So this is a very dynamic environment. Right? And how about the public?
It's lightning round time.
Mr. Brown, first in line, as usual.
No.
Well,
Mike
there you go. Mr. Brown.
Mike Brown, 5 Carousel Court, and I do want to thank George and Kathy for putting this together. I think it's great that they picked the ball up and ran with it. It'd be a shame if we didn't have this forum this year, so thank you very much. I just want to jump on the last question. April stole it from me. It is the question I asked last year. I'll cut to the chase. If elected, would you individually sponsor or support an effort to increase the number of instructional school days? Yes or no?
I'm going to start with Glenn.
Same answer that I gave when I was asked here and at the polls, I believe. Absolutely. And like I said, I don't believe the question has been answered or brought up seriously yet. So yes, simple.
Thank you. Melanie.
Mike, yes, I support looking at it. We have lived in a foreign culture. I have a cousin who's working on her doctorate right now who's worked in the California school systems, a very good school system that she was in. They go all year round with certain breaks. I've talked to her and she said, it is adjustment, but you get used to it. I definitely think it's something that should be looked at, should be visited. But like I said as well, our school system probably is doing great by our kids. I mean, my kids seem to be doing great. Do I notice difference from teacher to teacher? Yes. But I also really support, working with my kids at home. I do that. But I definitely think looking at our school year, looking at what can be learned in 180 days, I know the teachers are extremely stressed to get a curriculum done in 180 days. So I do support looking at it. I do.
Thanks, Melanie. And Joe?
Short answer, Mike, is yes. The tough answer is how. I don't know, but yes.
Thanks. And Letha?
Short answer is, I'm not sure. Someone has to convince me. Frankly, I need to see the return on investment. I need to see what goals are we trying to achieve in doing this. Is it just because we think they're not getting enough, or now, or that they could be better? We could get better scores if that's the goals, and how are we measuring that? I need to understand that. I need to understand any costs involved. To Mike's point earlier, you know, simple things like heating a building or air conditioning a building or teacher salaries, that sort of thing. But if someone can make a compelling argument and the numbers line up and it makes sense, yes, I would consider it.
Thank you, Letha. And Mike?
The question was, would I support extending the school year or studying it? Yeah, you can go ahead and read it again. Please.
Sponsor or support an effort to increase the number of instructional school days?
I would say no. It's, at this point, going to have a real difficult time passing a salary increase and funding the $26 million budget. So what you're simply asking me, am I going to increase the budget and have more school years? And I've got to trust the school board and the administrators and say no.
Thank you, Mike. And Steve?
Absolutely. I think we already have. Let me give some past examples. The school district, oftentimes I'm approached by parents, even parents on my own street, but you have to let my people go. It's time for summer vacation, or I have a condo, or my timeshare is this month or that month, and have to explain to them that it's the educational experience that is important, that they need to be in the school system in that class. The high school in my tenure has gone and instituted a rule that if you lose more than 5 days, you get a 0 in that class. You do not pass that class. So we're saying you cannot take your children out of school to go on a holiday to the Bahamas. You have to stay and have to keep them in school. The book bag idea I thought was great. The fact that we were doing a blizzard bag that was planned ahead of time, and the kids had their lessons planned. It was made up for them a day or two before they were able to use it. And what I said after that successful test, I thought successful, unfortunately the state has taken that opportunity away from us. I said, let's take a look at making a blizzard bag day an extra day. Instead of just having it replace a blizzard, let's add a day on.
Thank you, Steve.
At school?
Next question.
I'm sorry? Is that at school? Is that what you were thinking
Well,
about?
the blizzard bag concept was at home.
At home?
But providing them the materials.
And the state said no, because why? It wasn't at school?
The state didn't like the fact that we planned it ahead of time, believe it or not.
I believe that. Thanks, Steve. Sir?
Okay, my name is Joe Green from 25 Mammoth Road. Good luck to all of you at the March election. My question is, union contracts are going to be one of the items that you will most likely struggle with as a board member. In March, we'll vote on a contract for the teachers that will raise taxes considerably for 24,000 people, including some residents that may be struggling and elderly. This will increase the income of a much smaller number of residents that currently work for the schools and have skin in the game. But my question is, how would you protect the taxpayer more by leveling this deficit without using scare tactics like sports cutting and special ed cutting?
Thanks, Joe. And Melanie, you first.
Talitha, I'm first.
Oh.
I understand the economy is struggling. It's hard right now for a lot of people. There are a lot of people on fixed income. I've stated before, I've worked for businesses, and I've done things within the business to help save money without having to cut staff. I really believe that you need to review the school as a whole. You need to find where things are productive, things are not, and see where money is being spent that it could be saved. In the private sector, they have for example, my husband brought it to my attention, Six Sigma and CCMI or CMMI. They're products, and there are people who come in and can evaluate and look at the system as a whole and help find ways to save money. I don't believe that going to the taxpayer every time there's a renegotiated contract is the right answer. But I do believe that the school is a system. It contains people, it contains buildings, it contains children, most importantly. And for me, I believe the children are our first priority within the school. And I do believe that looking at any system, you can find ways to, as my key word is streamline, because I do believe in that. Whether it's doing, I'm very proud of the school system for the energy savings that they've been able to achieve, which technically has saved money. So I believe that there's other things within the school that could be done to save that money as well and save the taxpayer an increase.
I think it's about value, and value is two components: the quality of the product and the price, what a person is willing to pay for that product. And I believe that we need to enhance the value of the product along the lines that we've been doing. In terms of scare tactics, I agree with you. I think that there's no place for that, but it's inevitable. I personally believe that we need to be leaders of the community and saying, we should have the best that we can afford. And I realize that may be begging the question of what we can afford, but I would ask each citizen to look into their own soul and their own budget and say, is this really where I want to cut? The economy is getting better, some say not. Perhaps we should be optimistic. Perhaps we should be the ones that say, things are going to get better, and this isn't the place we're going to cut. We're going to go on and believe that we can do right by our community. In a family situation, your kid gets into school, you do anything possible to see to it that they can go to their dream school. As a community, I think we ought to take the same attitude. We ought to do anything possible to have our collective children have the best opportunities for success in the world when they leave town.
Thanks, Joe. Letha?
As I said in my opening remarks, I really believe that an investment in the schools is an investment in the community. I think whether you have children in the schools or you don't, or whether you've had them in the schools or you never have, I feel that your community is better as a whole for it if the school system and the priority toward educating the younger people is in place. I believe that because I think that your business community that chooses to stay here or to set up shop here and pay taxes in your tax base, that essentially contributes to that, it helps your home values as well. I think that, according to my calculations, since about 2008, Londonderry is running at about 0.5% less on average than the state for the cost per student. And that tells me that statistically and financially that we're doing a better job at keeping our costs down compared to the state average, compared to other towns that surround us. And I feel that the requests and concessions made by school administrators, our school board, our teachers unions, and the Allied Health Professionals Union, I think, have been pretty reasonable and fair. And no, do I think we need to give teachers raises, educators raises every single time they come to the table? No, but I think in this particular instance, I think that the contract negotiations were fair. I think there were enough concessions that went back and forth. And frankly, I think that if you want to continue in the line that we've been here with our quality education in Londonderry, I think you need to pay for that. You need to expect to pay for that.
Thank you.
I agree with Letha. I think that the teachers and the contract was a well-negotiated deal with the school board that we elected, and the teachers are part of an asset of this town, and I believe that the school board did the best job they could. I know negotiating with the district and trying to get this contract in front of the voters, and the question that I'm sure they always ask themselves is this going to fly? You know, that's not going to fly. We're going to have to cut this. We're going to have to negotiate that. I think that maybe I'm still trying to figure out about the budget committee and why there wasn't more interaction before the contract was signed, so that the school board would approach the budget committee and the budget committee would say, we're not cool with this. We don't think this is going to fly. And then I'm sure that the school board would have gone back and said, look, this is not going to fly. We're going to have to negotiate and come up with a better deal. But I believe that the school board, the district, the teachers did the best job that they could to get the best contract they could to keep that asset in our town.
Thanks, Mike.
Well,
Steve?
tough to answer in a minute, Joe, but here goes. It's a huge asset. It's a $25 million asset, and that's really the issue with this. The number is large that we'll be presenting to the voters, but that number is large because it's such a large group. There's 475 teachers in this union, and they make on the average $55,000, $60,000 a year across the group because we have a number of teachers that have been in the community and been in the district for a while. So it's an expensive asset, but it's an important asset, like was said down the table. Our students, the education is our product. But we need to start taking a look at the other side, not the expense side, but the revenue side. That is the solution to this problem in growing the revenue. Take, for instance, we have the AES power plant, which I proudly supported and helped to get into this community. And that came into the community and today is paying $6.5 million a year to the town of Londonderry. And they don't even pay the school side of the property tax. That's $6.5 million just to the town side, which of course contributes to the schools. Without AES, that would add $3 to our homeowners' tax rates today. You take smaller companies. Okay, so you've got Home Depot and you've got Harvey Windows, and maybe they only contribute $250,000 or $1/3 to our community. But what if we had 10 more Home Depots or 10 more Harvey Windows? Now, obviously, we don't want the same store, but how about a Cabela's? And how about a manufacturing plant for doors? And how about a manufacturing plant for solar panels? The development in this community for the revenue is what will be the solution to the school and town expenses.
Thank you, Steve. And Glenn?
I guess I'll address it really quick in a minute. As far as the scare tactics, I think the best way to eliminate the scare tactics is to get people educated. I received an email that told me from a school group that if those contracts fail, there will be cuts at South School. I sent it back and said, oh, I believe that's incorrect. I sent them copies of all the contracts, all the negotiations, everything. Never got another email back that said corrected information. When this was brought up, because I've been following this for a long time, the public never got a hold of the contracts. The contracts weren't available. All we got is what was presented at, I think, 11:30 at night. If you want to eliminate the scare tactics, put the information out there, make it easy to find so that everyone can read it. As far as the contracts themselves, I believe in paying teachers and paying them well for what they do. I think it's ridiculous that we pay a basketball player a couple $1 million and we pay a teacher $56,000. Unfortunately, the reality is the economy is bad. It's getting better, but it is bad. I think there was a tactical mistake made this year comparing to some other towns. A lot of other towns went with a one-year contract. Other towns went with a 0%. Last time this contract came up, it missed by about 190 votes failing. If it does fail, now you're in a pickle. What are you going to do? You're 3 years out and you have to negotiate. You're going to have to deal with the people. The voters are going to decide with all of these. If the voters decide not to vote for $600,000 in maintenance because it's a tax increase, the board up here has to figure out what to do. So I'm for supporting them, but it is a very tough economy. I know people that haven't had a raise for 7 years.
Thank you, Glenn. Appreciate that. And, oh, there we go.
Hi, Dan Tamburello. First, I want to thank you all for running for office. I think, as you know, I've experienced it, and I know it is it's putting yourself out there, and it's a great risk to yourself and to your family. Put a lot of time and take out of it. My question is, one of the things that I've noticed is that when you go and look at how schools' performance, it's judged based upon how many kids we send to college and how many graduate. And that's sort of the metric of success. If any of you have ever seen a gentleman on cable by the name of Mike Rowe, he testified in front of the U.S. Senate last summer that the United States is critically losing trade skills, the ability to do work with your hands, to understand, be electricians, carpenters, things like that. And if elected, how would you address how success is measured by schools in their production, not just with college, but what they end up doing in life on the outside.
Thanks, Dan. And Joe, we're going to start with you.
I would not change the metrics, as it were, because frankly, I don't understand them well enough to give an intelligent answer to your question. I can tell you as a philosophy that I believe that the current No Child Left Behind, if you want me to take a stand on that, I think it's a bad idea. I think, as I understand it, no child left behind, but every other child waits for the no child that's not being left behind. And that's the way that I think is not to go. So I would not change the metrics. If, as a policy, the board would want to reprioritize things within the metrics, then I would support that. But I just don't have the technical experience to answer your question more precisely than that.
Thanks, Joe. And Letha?
I wouldn't change the metrics necessarily. I'd be interested in anyone who has ideas about new metrics to add to that to get a more clear picture. I think that, it's my understanding when you talk about graduation rates and students moving on to 2- and 4-year institutions, colleges and universities, it's my understanding that that includes trade schools as well. I mean, those are considered, accredited institutions that for higher learning, whether it be in math, going to a 4-year university, or whether it be going to trade school to become a master electrician ultimately. I see where that encompasses everyone now. So, I mean, if there are other metrics that we could use to help further clarify that, or to help understand better the quality of education that we're providing, great. But
Thank you. And Mike?
I'm not sure how you figure out how your kid got a good education. Is it as simple, or measure that? Is it as simple as they grew up, they went to school, they had a viable trade, they had a family, they contributed to society in some way? I'm not sure how you're going to measure that. I'm sure that other societies measure it in different ways. I do know, to get specific, that about vocational trades, I do know that, and Steve, you can correct me, that the school district has tried to find a way to save money. And one of those ways that they've tried to save money is they've got their computer kids fixing their computers in the school. So how we measure it, I don't know, but I do know that the district and the school board and the town has tried to find innovative ways to save money, and some of those ways have probably come from ideas about, well, we need more vocational skills. So
Thanks, Mike. And Steve?
Yeah, not only do they fix our computers, they build them, and they require a lot less fixing than the ones we used to buy. So that's a good thing. So
they're
yeah,
not from China.
And they're not from China.
Although they're from Londonderry, the kids.
Most of the parts are from China.
No, the kids.
Yeah, the kids are, absolutely. Now, your question stimulates some interesting thought, because what you were talking about was success and measuring success. And there's companies out there that think they can do it by having testing and all that. Matter of fact, some companies are even named close to that. So they have these programs and they have these tests, and the school goes through a number of them. They go through the DIBELS and the kneecap and all that. I think one of the good things the school district has done is they've created a database which combines all of these tests so that the teachers can analyze them on their desktop to see how the students in their class are doing. The administration can analyze it to see how the teachers are doing. And then there's the other easy measurements, which are how many people are we graduating. I prefer to look at it that way versus how many dropouts we have. We've all heard the President Obama commercial on the radio. 30% of the students drop out of high school. Well, in Londonderry, it's less than 1%. As a matter of fact, last year it was just one single person. So our graduation rate is 99.8, 99.9%, easy to measure. About 90% of our students go on to 2-year schools and 4-year schools or into the service. Easy to measure, easy to say. They've just started to look at the colleges and go to the colleges and say, how are our students in the colleges? Are they prepared when they come to you from Londonderry High School? That's good. But what you bring up is, how could my high school find me and say, hey, how are you doing? And how did we do? Because frankly, I was not voted to be the best person in the school. and they wouldn't even let me join the Future Business Club of America. So,
Thank you, Steve.
interesting thought.
Very interesting. Glenn?
No Child Left Behind and testing and national testing, you could talk about this for hours on end. I'm not necessarily a fan of testing. My kids tend not to test well, but they did exceptionally well. My son's going to college. As far as the graduation rate, I think we need some more information, which Steve started to comment a little bit about. You get to college, you've made it. Now you have to survive 4 years. I think what really defines the education you got is, can you get through 4 years? Can you get through 4 years of a tough school? Are you going to go to a school that I'm going to graduate after 4 years, but I didn't really try because it was an easy school? Those are the numbers that don't seem to get asked. I think overall, from Department of Education down, the education system tends to be a little bit slower in reacting. I heard a couple weeks ago, a girl, she went to college. I was told, if I go to college, I'm going to get a good job. I'm going to get this and this and this. A year and a half into it, she started looking around, what's going to happen in 3 years? She said, I'm not going to have a job. I'm going to get my degree. I'm not going to have a job. She dropped out of college. She went to a trade school. She said, I like animals, opened a pet grooming company. In 2 years, she's got a great job. Unfortunately, a lot of times you hear, go to college and you're all set. Go to college and you're all set. I actually went to a trade school in high school. And Dan is right. We are losing trades. A lot of the things that you can do here and be very, very successful, people are taught that's not the way to do it. Be a doctor. Be a lawyer. Be a big company executive. You need to go out and somehow, and I don't know how you could get a hold of them 6 years from now and say, how did you do? How are you doing? I'd like to see the information because I think that's what tells you what your school did, not if you passed a test.
Thanks, Glenn. Appreciate it. Melanie?
Thanks, hon.
She did say she didn't want you to ask questions.
I didn't know.
She
No.
did try to stop you, so it's my fault. Don't
He's-
blame him. I
yeah.
let him talk.
I did try to stop him. No, I wish I did.
I think you should be on the record for that.
Thank you. In our house, I value vocation as we come from parents that are tradesmen as well as college graduates who've been successful. So my hope would be for the children who go into a vocation that their success is measured the same as a child who goes to college. You finish a 2-year school, you finish a 4-year school, you finish your trade school and your apprenticeship. I believe as long as you're being a productive member of society and not sitting home, you know, playing video games at the age of 26 because you just decided not to get a job, that you're being productive and that you followed what you felt your gift was, where your heart led you, and that you're going to do something that you enjoy. I hope that my kids, you know, go to college, get a degree, and enjoy what they do, and get another degree, and maybe enjoy something else to do. But my hopes would also be that they don't just know how to do school. So for me, having some sort of vocation, whether it's knowing how to change oil in a car, or your tires, or cutting a tree down and being able to chop it up and sell the wood, or whether it means you go to college and become an astrophysicist, I hope that the success that they receive from their elementary through high school years, their trade and or college years, and then how productive they are on the outside world once they stop their primary education, would be measured the same, because I believe everybody contributes to society. It's not just the people who are the engineers, the doctors, the lawyers. You also have the people who have their own companies and they're putting your tires on your car. They're you know, they're owning their own sign business and e-commerce, and you've got to find, first of all, what drives you, second of all, what makes you happy, and third of all, what makes you successful. So I would hope success is measured by how you contribute, not so much on what school you went to and what you decided your major would be.
Thanks, Melanie. And yes.
You guys are going much longer than a minute. So
Come on, everybody?
That clock has a really small minute
I
hand.
was brief.
Just
say I was brief.
Can you just raise your
She's
hand
only
when there's
giving me
10
the
seconds
cut
left?
signal. That's what I want to know.
When there's 10 seconds left, give us a 10-second warning.
School her, see that?
Thank you.
Hi, thank you.
Thank you, George. I want to back up to increasing in classroom instructional time for just a moment, if we could. And I want to sort of quote one thing that Sean O'Keefe said in the meeting earlier, which is, it's difficult to maintain the same level of service without spending more money. It would be difficult for me to imagine that if we choose to increase our instructional time in the classroom, that it would not come with increased cost. So I'm wondering, certainly without, details in terms of what it would cost us, should we move down the road where we decide as a board to increase instructional time in the classroom and have to look at costs associated with that? I'm wondering if you could just perhaps share some of your thoughts and or comments about costs that are associated with increasing instructional time. Thank you.
Thank you. And Letha, you're up.
If I understand your question, it kind of goes back to my point before when this question was first brought up. I need a compelling argument that someone would need to make a compelling argument to me that the benefits outweigh the costs. And to start with the benefits, I'd need to understand where are we trying to get to by extending the school year. I mean, I want to make sure I'm answering your question here, but and if it's because you think we're lacking in the quality of education, well, that's one discussion. And if you think that we need to improve that, fine. What is it? How are we going to measure it? With regard to the expenses, yeah, you'd need to flush out a lot. Everything from the littlest thing, like, or the smaller things like how long are we talking at school? Are we talking breakfast? So does that mean the cafeteria needs to serve breakfast now? Does that mean that obviously if we're going in the summer, do we need air conditioning? Are our buildings equipped to? Do they have the infrastructure available right now to install air conditioning or fans? I don't know. There's a whole laundry list of expenses. You could go on for days to analyze them down at that level and at a higher level. But I think really this would need to be very thoughtful, very meticulous, and you'd need to understand that the benefits outweigh the expenses.
Thanks, Letha. And Mike.
It was a long question, but it was the fact that you want to have a serious discussion about increasing classroom instruction and the associated cost. I think that would be a great discussion that the school board and the voters, if they wish to go down that road, should have. And I am confident that the group of people on the school board, in conjunction with the district and the budget committee, could come up with some solutions for your problem. And I'm sure they probably have some waiting right there right now. Ways to cut costs, to get the teachers there longer, to get the kids there longer. I'm sure that solutions could be found for those problems if that's the way we want to go. I guess that's going to answer that question.
Thanks,
Thank you.
Mike. Steve?
In the last month, the school board has created a task force that will work into next year to look at this issue, the length of the school day and that type of thing. But you are right, it does come at a cost. We've already seen and made changes that come at a cost. The state only requires us to have 20 credits. That's, so we don't have to have any more, but we made the decision as a community and as a school district to go to 24 credits. That has a cost. That cost is putting more classes in place. That cost is keeping the students in the school longer, and it has been an expense. I think we've covered that expense by having the teachers working smarter, working harder, not necessarily longer. But we do know if we wanted to decrease the budget, one way we could do it is to drop from 24 to 20 credits. So I think we do have to be clear. It's going to cost money if we lengthen the school day. But nasty November. There's things we can do. We're taking a day in that month and putting it back into the school calendar so the kids won't be out that. By consolidating or making sure that the kids don't have a bunch of days off with spaces in between, so that they're getting all of their time off together so that they can keep continuity in the classroom and just working smart.
Thanks, Steve. Glenn?
First off, I really think it's a discussion that needs to take place. And to throw out there that it's going to raise costs, so therefore we shouldn't do it, and the 5 of us don't want to raise costs, I think is absolutely ridiculous. I'm sorry, I'm kind of passionate about this. And I keep going back to the people I work with, but you have to compete. You have to decide if you want to compete. I hear over and over and over that education, investing in education, there's a reason we do that. Maybe people want to invest in more educational time or increasing the time. And if it costs money, the parents can decide if they want to fund it. If we have a discussion and they say, you know what, we would rather fund education and not fund this, let's do it. I'm not saying cut certain programs, but the kids have to compete. You know, and I hear it over and over and over, especially from my son. You know, he's in college now. These kids just think life is golden. I get out and I'm good. And then you walk in and you walk into a building that's full of Taiwanese, Chinese, Korean, and a slew of others that have spent the last 12 years, they don't even know what baseball is. But I tell you, they're brain children. We need to grab that back while we still can. And the time just went off. I saw the hand.
Thanks,
I was pretty
Glenn.
much done anyway, so.
Melanie?
After speaking to quite a few teachers, it seems like a lot of the education that the kids are getting, it's lost in the long breaks. They spend summer vacation, and then they come back, and it's, you know, a month and a half before the kids really are back in the time frame of, you know, this is how school works. They're back in the mind frame of this is what I've got to get done. I'm a big fan of looking at maybe not an extended day, but maybe a revolving year, where the days may remain the same, but the breaks are shorter, so you don't get a 2.5-month stint off to lose everything. I do believe the discussion has to be had, because there are impacts monetarily to the system as well. Like Letha said, the air conditioning if you need air conditioning, heating if you need heating, you're going to leave the lights on longer, you're going to leave the lights on less. I mean, it's all stuff that has to be looked at, but I do believe the long breaks do give the children a lot more time to lose what they've learned if you don't have a home environment that, you know, you look at what they have and where they need to go next year. So I really support looking at what can make the children more productive and what can make the teachers happy, as far as, you know, what their expectations are when the kids are in the classroom. So I definitely believe it's a discussion to be had, but I definitely believe, you know, with any change there's a monetary impact, and it'll always be more at the beginning versus once you get a system up and running.
Thanks, Melanie. Joe?
Being last online, I kind of feel like that game of telephone where, what did you hear, what did you hear? As I understood the question was, can we actually talk about an expansion of instructional days without considering cost? The short answer is no, we can't. But the real question is, should we? And I think we don't give our teachers enough credit, frankly. I think there's a leap that, well, if we ask them to work another 3 days, that they're going to expect a pro rata or per diem increase. And I just don't think that that's fair or accurate. When I became a school teacher in 1978, I made the princely sum of $84.10 a year. I controlled it for, I got a CPI calculator and I figured it out. It's about $30,000. Not what motivated me to become a teacher. And I think across the board, I've had the pleasure of knowing many teachers firsthand. That's not what motivated them. And so let's not be so simplistic to say that at least the teacher component is lockstep going to cost more. I think many teachers would welcome the opportunity to enhance the experience that they can provide to their students and find creative ways around it. Maybe giving them a day off here and a day off there. We have an incredibly broad substitute base. We use them. Maybe that's a creative way to get the value and keep the cost reasonable.
Thanks, Joe. And we'll move back over to the press. So, Meredith.
Approximately 6,000 to 7,000 people are in the schools during the day. The police department currently provides one school resource officer. Do you believe that this is an adequate coverage for the community, and why?
And we're going to start with Mike.
Joe, is it adequate? Steve, do we need more, or?
Do I get to go first?
I would think that there's one at the high school, right? Is that what, that was,
Yep.
there's only one at the high school. I think that is probably adequate for the high school, and then hopefully that would be enough for the town. I do think that it's enough.
Thanks, Mike. Steve?
We presently have one at the high school. We did have one at the middle school, and then we had one that floated between all of the elementary schools. That was what we had. The question was brought up earlier, I think it was by Councilor Green, about the issue of always pulling out the ones that tear at you, getting rid of the band program, that type of thing. It does seem that the school resource officer always gets pulled out on the police budget. That's the way they're going to save money. The district would rather have more coverage, more SRO officers in those schools, but right now the financial position the community's in is that's all they can afford. I will say that they've made up for it by doing some other things. I hear the officers, and I'm sure some people in the audience listen to the scanner too. The officers will do walkthroughs at the schools during the day. They'll stop into Moose Hill and they'll stop into the elementary schools and walk through the schools. I think that's good for two reasons. It lets the communities know the officers care about the schools, and it also lets the students know, hey, that officer's out there to make sure that we're okay. There was talks when we did this police station of having it elsewhere and not in the center of the community where our campus is. And I'm so happy that it's here where the police officers can be right close by should we have anything happen. And we know they train inside the schools to make sure that they know what to do if something does happen.
Thanks, Steve. Glenn?
I guess if you look at a couple different areas, have we had any serious issues like other places do? I don't think we have. Other communities, unfortunately, need resource officers, metal detectors, and in some cases, someone standing at the door. I don't think Londonderry needs that. I don't think we've had any issues. I haven't heard an incredible outcry saying we want them back. I think you need to look at the teachers and what the teachers do to maintain issues. If the kids are allowed to be off down the hall alone without being somewhat supervised, I mean, we have video cameras in a lot of the schools, you would need more of a presence walking through. If the teachers were not paying attention to what was going on and allowing issues to build, you might need a police officer. Personally, I would much rather have my kids in a school that didn't need a police officer, didn't need someone with a gun. Unfortunately, sometimes in some places you do need it, but I think a lot of it has to do with the teachers being able to maintain control. And from what I've heard, the teachers are pretty much maintaining control.
Thank you, Glenn. Melanie?
I believe the one officer is suitable at this point. I don't believe we have schools filled with trouble. I also agree that the police station is pretty centrally located, and I have seen the police officers out on their walks through. So with the one officer, which the children love, dedicated to the schools, I believe he is enough, because we do have a police department that is right here should something arise. And I do believe that our police force does have a sense of duty to our community. So I believe they're taking care of us too, especially by doing their walkthroughs. And I do believe they've got good communication, whereas if they need to be there, they can. So I do believe it's enough.
Thank you, Melanie. Joe?
As I understand it, a resource officer is not necessarily a first responder. This isn't a Columbine situation. As I understood it, they are the face of the law enforcement. They're there to lend support, but I also think they're there to let the kids know that they're being watched, and that's not a bad thing. In terms of expanding it, I don't feel the need, but I'm not really convinced by the argument that we don't need it because it hasn't happened. We may be looking at it backwards. Maybe it hasn't happened because the officer was there. It's like the fire extinguisher in my kitchen. You hope you never need it, but it's good to know that it's there when you do. And so I would not want to be in a position of waiting for a bad incident to happen and saying, oh, woulda, coulda, shoulda.
Thanks, Joe. And Letha?
I think this is a good example of, in our community, of that we've given the economic times and everything, we've done more with less. You know, is one enough? I'm not really sure, but then again, I think the school board and school administrators, if they tell me that that's enough, then I'm willing to go with their recommendation. But I also know what's been done to ensure the safety in our schools. I know that teachers and even office staff are prepped and trained in making sure the students are safe, making sure that they're handed off to the right parent when they come in. I mean, those are big responsibilities that go beyond your average office assistant title. So I think that the educators have worked in concert with each other to really assist each other in that regard. I know as a substitute teacher, I've been handed a walkie-talkie on the playground. There's constant communication within the schools. If should trouble arise or just issues come up where you need backup, and those things do happen sometimes. But I think we've done more with less. This is a creative solution that we've put in place where we've trained a lot of the staff to understand what to do and how to keep our children safe in the school. At some point, if that discussion needs to go back to the taxpayers to ask, you know, should we have more than that, and are we willing to pay for that, then we need to address that then.
Thank you, Letha. And with that, April.
Parents of the upperclassmen will soon be given the option of having their kids' progress reports emailed to them. What are some of the other things that staff and faculty can do when it comes to engaging parents in their children's education?
Thank you, April. Steve, you're up.
Yeah, thanks, April. I actually saw that as probably one of the biggest benefits of this pilot program, the fact that we would email and tell parents how to access the progress reports electronically, because it may get those parents that are not yet engaged in their students' programs electronically a window into how much power they actually now have. I did want to make sure that the schools also put it on the reader boards in front of the schools, because frankly that's where you get all my information. I drive down the road and it says, you know, progress reports released, and I know I used to always ask my kids when I got home, the board said progress reports were released, but you didn't give it to me yet. And it was always that, oh yeah, well, parents may not even know. They have the ability to access and find out if their students in class, to find out if they got there on time, to find out if they missed any classes, about their grades, about their progress, all real time. And I think that getting connected and having the progress reports go out that way is a good idea. We have about 90 parents who don't want anything electronically. They want it on paper or by mail or by book bag courier, and that's fine. They're going to keep doing that. But it's good to, I think the parents will expand on their use of it. Look at the school lunch program. You pay your money online, you put your money into the system, and your student has a card and they don't go hungry at school.
Thanks, Steve. Glenn?
As far as that, I know the X2, they use it to send it out. I think it's a good idea. I'm not a paper person. I'd rather have something electronic. Most of the teachers have websites available through the school. On the school site, they can put information out there, put links. My daughter's on her teacher's page all the time, playing a number of games and this and that, educational based, of course. One thing I would like to jump to is information as far as getting information out from the school board. I think that's one of the areas that's lacking. A lot of people don't have any idea what's going on at the school board. Getting the information can be difficult. I got Friday newsletters that say, please come out and vote, please come out and vote. I'd like to see an email that says, there's a school board Tuesday night, here's what we're talking about. If you let people get involved in the decision process earlier, when the times are tough and you have to make tough decisions, I think you're much better off when people know what's coming and can kind of pay attention. I've asked for years I've asked George for a long time to get some information put out there. There's all kinds of technology we can use, all kinds of ways. The more you can interact with the community, the better.
Thanks, Glenn. And Melanie?
I'm going to ask you to repeat your question to make sure it's answered.
All right, parents will soon be given the option of receiving their child's progress reports via email. What are some of the other things staff and faculty can do when it comes to engaging parents in their children's education?
One of the things I love that comes home is the homework sheet. We have to, even at the second grade level, sign off on daily math practice and daily activities, and then send back a form with the homework that says, you know, what participation level has been and that the assignment has been done correctly. I can say I last week missed part of a page, and my son didn't color in the graph, and I missed that, and it came back home, and you know, we fixed it and sent it back. I know at the middle school level, I don't know in the upper grades in elementary, the kids get an agenda that the parents also sign off on, and I think that's great because it keeps you in tune versus you know, your child coming home and say, yeah, I got math homework. Well, what's your math homework? And not every child's going to answer, don't worry, I already got it done. Well, I think the agenda is a good way of making the children accountable to their parents and the parents accountable to the children to make sure the work that's being asked is getting done. I am a big fan as well of electronic versus wasting paper. So if agendas could go electronic, gosh, that'd be great. But as for now, I really feel like the email, the teacher's page, you know, so you know what time your kid's going to snack or lunch if you maybe forgot to pack a snack, or, you know, they had a form that was due back and somebody colored on it by accident or whatever. I really feel that those things have engaged us a lot more, and I would hope that parents use it as much as I do. So.
Thank you, Melanie. Joe?
I think the email idea is a no-brainer. It just makes sense. But to the broader question of community involvement, which I thought was also part of your question, I'm a big fan of bringing the community into the classroom. I know it's probably easier at the elementary level because of the flexibility in the curriculum, but I believe that it ought to be a policy, or at least an encouragement to our teachers to say, when you can, is there somebody out there, is somebody's father an actuary? I didn't even know what an actuary was for the longest time. But we're dealing with math all the time. Why do I need math? Why do I need math? Well, maybe somebody coming in and saying for a half an hour, this is why I need math. I remember when my kids were in kindergarten and it was career day, so they got a lawyer. Like, what did a lawyer do? I had to follow a nurse who brought ace bandages and a woodworker who sent them home with bird houses. What did my kids go home with? A contract. And later at the, you know, when we notarized them and made them pretty and all, but every day after that, my daughter would ask, Dad, did you notarize any contracts today? Because that's what I was. But the point is that when you engage the community, it's a win-win situation. The kids get real experience as to what's going on out there. Maybe, just maybe, one of those sparks will go off. But the other, I think, is more subtle, and that is when you bring the community in, that person in the community becomes invested in the school. He sees the school, he spreads the word at the water cooler, and he all of a sudden becomes a stakeholder and an asset to our district.
Thanks, Joe. And Letha?
Oh, Joe stole my thunder. Again, it's hard going near last. Yeah, I think we have a lot of one-way communication coming from the teachers. You know, I'm not sure about the upper grades, but I do know I have a good experience with my children in the elementary schools. We do get, like to Melanie's point, the sign-offs and whatnot, and the end of the week letter from the principal that talked about all the high points that happened over the course of the school week. You can see some of the activities that go on the, I believe, the Leo channel on cable, which is always nice. You know, if you want to have more parental involvement, it needs to be you need to have a two-way exchange. The inviting parents in, making them not afraid to cross the threshold into the school and invite them in. The teachers can certainly do that and make invitations, but I think it's incumbent upon the parents to also say on that first week of school, hey, I have a skill that I'd like to bring to the classroom, and if you can work me in, I'm happy to volunteer. That sort of thing. But I think the PTA gets involved in many ways and draws the parents in. So I think there is that two-way communication, but I would, to Glenn's point too, I would like to see more involvement from parents as well at the school board meetings. I know I don't necessarily attend the school board meetings, I more or less watch them from home, but I consider that at least involvement in the sense that, that I understand what's going on.
Thank you. And Mike?
Personally, I would like to see a little bit more electronic communications from the school that I'm involved in at the high school. I think Jason Parent's letter that comes out quarterly, I think, or maybe a little bit more than that, telling us what's going on at school or what's going to happen next, that could come out in an email on my smartphone, or we could tag to it so that it could be whatever you want to be a friend to it, or however that social media is set up. I also think that the Blizzard bag went out that way as a vote. I think those are really good things that we could continue to engage the community with, and I'm sure that the administrators would be more than happy to do that kind of thing. I also would key on the fact that we get alerts from a college that's 1,300 miles, maybe not 700 miles from here, on both my wife and I's phone if something happens at the University of Virginia. And we would hope that that would continue with our other daughter where they go. So technology is huge, and we can pass that information on in a number of different ways.
Thanks, Mike.
How was time?
Thank you. Any other questions from the audience?
No.
Oh, I got to do it.
The school does have Twitter, though, doesn't it?
Okay, the Senate recently passed some wording, it's going on to the House, regarding a constitutional amendment for school aid funding. It's going to have 3 parts. Do you support the amendment? Do you think it's going to have an adverse effect on the Londonderry School District if downshifting continues and the legislature decide the rate of funding? So that's the question. I'll try to make it simple. Is with this constitutional amendment, are you for the constitutional amendment? If yes or no, and what effect do you think the legislature is taking over directing aid to each community? Do you think it'll have an adverse effect on Londonderry or a positive, effect, and what would you do in that circumstance? I know it's kind of a complicated question, but it's probably the biggest issue that's going to be facing school districts if the education funding is changed again.
Thanks, Kathy. Glenn, we're going to start with you.
Actually, I did, been following this a while. I do follow stuff up at the state a lot, too. I read the article in, I believe it was the Tribune yesterday. It didn't actually state what the wording was. I didn't have time to go look at it, so I can't say whether or not I agree or disagree with it. Will it affect Londonderry? I know Superintendent Greenberg's opinion is it's so vague right now, he doesn't really know. It could, it might not. I think this does go back to the education, though. This is a big thing, and it would be unfortunate for a very, very small group of people that have no life and come to events like this and pay attention to make those decisions. There are people that have agendas, want certain things. We're in competition with other towns for funding. Londonderry gets funds now. It needs to be discussed. The information needs to get out there, and I think it would be great to send out an invite to the entire school and say, this is what's coming down. You people need to know about it, and then the people get to make the decision. Because you don't want someone up at Concord voting on it just because, well, I heard from Jack that he said this, and 800 of my friends are going to vote the way Jack did, and, well, Jack was wrong because the wording wasn't in there. It's and a lot of times it's hard to figure out from the newspapers what's really going on.
Thanks, Glenn. Melanie?
I know there were 2 bills tabled up at the State House because nobody really felt taking aid away from schools was a good decision, and that's always a good thing. I do have projected adequacy aid, which shows no change from this year to next year, direct from the State House. I feel any detriment to educational monies is a detriment to a child in the school, the people who support those children, the people who support the schools. I'm also not for raising taxes. I already pay a lot in taxes, and it makes it a very hard line to walk when you say, do you support a bill or don't you? Because within every bill, there's probably 5 sentences I like and then 5 sentences I don't. My hope would be that we receive what we're entitled to receive, that our children receive the education that isn't just adequate but is exceptional because we've put exceptional people in place. So to answer your question, short answer, I don't really support or not support. I would like to see what comes out of it and where it goes from people looking and reviewing it and making sure that the people that are in place for us are doing the right things for us.
Thank you, Melanie. And Joe?
Here again, I have to confess technical ignorance. I'm not familiar with the particular wording of the proposed amendment. I can tell you as an attorney, though, that I am usually very disinclined to actions to change the Constitution. It cuts at the very heart of what a Constitution is. A Constitution, if you will, is a document, a governing document that is put together after much thought that should withstand the winds of time and the political changes that come and go. Its very strength is its insusceptibility, not being susceptible to change. And so for that reason, without knowing more, I don't like the idea of, well, we didn't like the outcome in the court, so let's go change the rule. A ground rule double is a ground rule double. And if you don't like it, too bad. That's what it is. So my answer is somewhat vague, I'm sure, and I apologize, but I don't think that a constitutional amendment is necessarily the way to go. And I also understand that Nate and the town of Londonderry have been in the forefront of advocating for Londonderry's position in these various political battles.
Thanks, Joe. And Letha?
Yeah, I think the way they are, the way they stand now, I think there's just too many vagaries in there. I think it's open for much more discussion, and I'd like to see more compelling arguments, frankly, from either side. But I think any time when you're considering taking away funding that you thought was going to be there, obviously that's a change in tact. But I think it has to look at the overall intent. You know, are you looking at completely changing the quality of education that you're going to offer in the state as a whole? I think that needs to be a lot more looked at a lot more seriously. But I don't know if I can talk to all the particular points, but I'm willing to hear a lot of discussion points around each. But to answer your question, Kathy, I'm not sure I could support or not support that right now, because frankly, I don't know enough.
Thank you. And Mike?
My understanding of the question is that I would not support a constitutional amendment because from my understanding of the broad overspect of this is that we are trying to provide for adequate education, and we couldn't make the hard choices and do it the way the legislative branch tried to do it, and so now we've decided that we're going to change the Constitution. I think that there's some hard choices that need to be made on how to adequately and fairly fund education, and I don't think that a constitutional amendment is the way to do it.
Thanks, Mike. Steve?
No, I don't support a constitutional amendment. I wouldn't vote for a constitutional amendment. And yes, I do think it'll have an adverse effect. I have a slight unfair advantage here as the president of NH Cafes because I follow this. Presently, they're still making sausage. There's two bills that are different. The House passed a constitutional amendment last week. Sharon Carson, our senator, voted against it, and I appreciate her doing that. The Senate bill has in it a provision for some funding to school districts, and as I understand it, the House constitutional amendment bill does not. It talks about eliminating that responsibility completely so that they can target aid. The problem with targeting aid is we go back to the mid-2000s, in the middle of the last decade, when House Bill 616 came out. And House Bill 616, the way school funding was managed, it was managed by a spreadsheet. And if you were the fattest cat in the room, you got in there and you made sure that your town formula was tweaked because you had a certain number of special needs students, or you had a certain number of second language students, or the lunch program, or whatever it might be. So the court decision that came down, it gave 4 mandates. You must define an adequate education, you must fund an adequate education, and you must hold yourselves accountable for providing that adequate education. Well, the legislative body defined it, and they found out that it was $30,450. Now they have to fund it. We shouldn't let them get out of it.
Thank you, Steve. And with that, as I look at the clock, we've just about reached our time, so what I'd like to do is allow each of you a minute to wrap up, and since we started there, we'll now start there. So Letha, it's all yours.
I would like to thank everyone for coming today, and thank you for inviting me as well. I really have enjoyed my time on the planning board and several other commissions in town. I know that sounds a little odd to some people, but I really do have fun at these things. I really love engaging and understanding the issues and trying to work out an equitable solution for all parties. And I feel that I can offer a skill set that will aid in that, and I have energy and enthusiasm to do it, and I'd ask for your vote on Election Day.
Thank you, Letha. And Joe?
Thank you for having me. I also have enjoyed the conversation. I've learned a lot, and hope that I would be given the opportunity to continue in this collaborative effort to continue the course. I think of our role in the school board as perhaps a sailing metaphor is appropriate. We all pretty much agree on the course, but that's not to say that we aren't constantly trying to tweak our sails and get the most out of the resources, whether it be wind or equipment that we have. So I'm not for any major course deviation. A vote for me would not be a vote for change. A vote for me would be a vote for energy, creativeness, collaboration, and hopefully an opportunity to say, we've got a good thing going, but we can always do better.
Thank you, Joe. And Melanie?
Again, I'm Melanie Tamburello. I thank everyone for coming today. Thank you, Kathy, for putting it together. I would hope you would vote for me. I really enjoy the school district, people who are in it. I do believe fresh eyes in any scenario can always bring a new perspective. I would hope to get that chance on the school board. I've been in the business sector as well as the people sector, so I really do work well as a team member. I enjoy being on a team, and I believe the school board is a team. So I would hope to get the chance to serve on the school board and bring some maybe great ideas and or opportunities to our schools.
Thank you, Melanie. And Glenn?
Thanks, George. Thanks for your time. It's a little nippy in here, so thanks for freezing with us. Why am I running? Why do I want to do this? When my son was in the first grade, there was a thing up at LHS about a possible issue they had way back then with drugs in the school system. And I told my wife, I says, I'm going to the meeting. And she says, well, why are you going to the meeting? I says, because if we're going to stay here, sooner or later, my son's going to be at LHS, and I want to know what's going on. And pretty much since that point, I've been paying attention. I follow the school board. Last year when I decided to run, my wife said, why don't you just run? Because It's just where you're going to sit. Instead of sitting in the back of the room, you're going to sit in the front of the room. So you might as well give it a shot. I do have an interest in education. I do think we need a change. I don't believe that necessarily means changing education. I think we need to improve it, but I think we need to involve the community a lot more up front. With the constitutional amendment, people need to know what's coming down, what's changing. I hear over and over and over, please come and vote, please come and vote. If you want to know what's going on and you want to affect what you're voting on, you need to be here at 11:30 at night when we're talking about budgets, when they're talking about what might get cut. Eliminate the scare tactics, put the information out there. We need to do a better job in getting it out there so there are no scare tactics. You know exactly what you're going to get if you vote yes, and you know exactly what you're going to get if you vote no. And I think we do need a change in the school board to get the information out. One of the things that John Robinson said was, you know, unfortunately, Ron Campo has been on the school board for 21 years is left. And he's taking that history with him. And knowing Ron, I doubt he'll disappear. He'll probably be throwing in some history lessons to whoever gets lucky enough or unlucky enough to sit up here. But you need to know what happened, and you need to be educated and not repeat bad past behavior that was horrible. Ron's told some horror stories. Get people involved and let them know what's going on, especially if the economy continues to go sour. If we're forced after the 13th to make some tough decisions, it could be a difficult position for some people to be sitting up here, and I would ask you to vote.
Thank you very much, Glenn. Steve?
Thank you, George. First of all, I'd like to say how impressed I am with the citizen volunteers that have come forward for this board. If we had this for every election, this would absolutely be a powerful, powerful community. So thanks, everyone, for stepping forward. I would appreciate to continue to serve on this board. I'm completing my third term. This is now nearly a $65 million business, and the business is of educating children, making sure that we have the best school district in the state, and I'd like to keep that up. One of the things I do in my job is businesses come to me and ask me about the community. They want to know why they should move here, and the first question they normally ask, what's the school district like? And they may be a grocery store that's looking to locate near one of our exits, and they want to know what the school district's like for the young kids that they're going to hire to be bagging groceries and running the registers and stocking the shelves. Or it could be a high-tech company, Stonyfield, saying, what's the school like? Because they want to know what their talent base is like. And I want to make sure that I'm here to keep the school district the best that it can be. Oddly enough, I'm also here to make sure that nobody comes to our meetings. And let me explain that. When people come to the school board meetings, they're not happy. It's redistricting, it's bus issues, it's math, they have got a problem and they storm the castle. It's you're going to take away our music program. So if I can help to run the district as one of the board of member directors, directing the superintendent as a 5-person board to do the right things, and people don't come because they're happy, that's a good thing. And my home phone number is on the internet, just like all the other school board members, so you can reach us anytime. Thank you. Please vote.
Thank you, Steve. And Mike?
Thank you, George. I'd like to echo Steve's words. I'm not sure. I'm going to go vote, but I'm not sure which one of you candidates I'm going to vote for, but I think that you've all done a great job. Any one of you could have my vote. I'm just going to have to figure out which one that is. I think I'm going to vote for myself. I'm not sure yet, but we'll see. Why do I want to do this? I grew up in Derry. My wife grew up in Londonderry. Our kids went here, served a long time in the military. I'm going to, if lucky enough, I guess that's the word, if I'm chosen to come to the school board, I'm going to sit and listen for a while. I'm going to try and figure out how I can help, what the problems are, what I can add to the school board. One of the main reasons I decided to run was that there were 2 openings. I did not really want to run against anybody. I thought that everybody that was on the school board was doing an adequate job. So that being said, I believe it's important to keep some continuity on that board. That would be said enough. But if I'm lucky enough and people would like to have me and my attitude on the school board, I'd appreciate your vote. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Mike, and I would just want to thank you all, not on my own behalf, but on behalf of the community, for certainly stepping up. It's not easy putting yourself out in front there. Thank you all very much. I wish you all good luck, and for everybody in the community, just remember, March 13th, get out and vote. The polls are open 7 a.m. to 8 p.m. The only polling place in Londonderry is Londonderry High School. We certainly hope to see you there. Wish you all luck. Thanks, everybody, for coming out. Have a good afternoon.
Thank you.
Thank you. It's freezing.